Here to talk more about the case and the evidence that we know about, State Attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, Dave Aronberg. Dave, good morning to you. Always good to see you. Thank you for talking to us about this one. So investigators in making an arrest did not have to find a motive. That is not their intent and their priority. How about prosecutors to get a conviction?
Good morning, Marni. Yeah, although prosecutors don't have to show a motive to get a conviction for first-degree murder, juries want to know the motive, especially when they see this clean-cut guy with no criminal background. They want to know why he did it. Now, I think it's coming into focus why he did it. He seemed to be a devotee of serial killers and crime. I mean, he studied under the BTK's autobiographer. I mean, he was so interested in true crime that it looks like he wanted to be the center of his own story.
Let's talk a little bit about the evidence that we know about that was released in the affidavit. What do you think is the most significant piece of evidence that's been publicly realized that will help prosecutors get a conviction?
I think the DNA is most powerful. I mean, science is science, and they have to a 99.999+% certainty that the father was the father of the DNA left on the sheath of the knife, meaning that this defendant's father, to almost a certainty, was the father of the killer. So I think that is really powerful. Now, remember, all the evidence that we have heard of right now has not been tested by the defense lawyers, the witnesses, and I think that's another powerful bit of evidence. The eyewitness that was there that night, she hasn't been put on the stand under cross-examination. You also have the defendant tied to the white Hyundai that was used in the crime. They have cell phone data that shows him in the vicinity before and after the crime. So they got a lot of evidence already, and I suspect there's more to come.
They don't have the murder weapon, though, at least to our knowledge, and we were just showing a similar knife on the screen. How critical is that piece of evidence?
Well, it'll be helpful, but in so many cases that we deal with, we don't find the murder weapon. And these guys, especially this guy who's an expert in this area, who is obviously knowledgeable enough to hide the murder weapon or to dispense with it. But you can still get a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt with all the other evidence out there. The one thing, though, that prosecutors will find as a challenge is to convince a jury of the motive. Because, as you said, you know, the jurors, they don't have to have a motive, but they want to know the motive, and you've got to show why this guy would do a crime like this. But I think, to me, it's coming into focus. I mean, this is the kind of person who is either, according to reports, either a serial killer or a wannabe serial killer, because he is fascinated by this stuff. I mean, he asked in this research study for information for people to tell them who committed crimes, why they did it, and what was going through their minds and how they felt about it. So it seems like this is the kind of person who would do such a barbaric act with no financial motive just because he wanted to do it.
What do you suspect the defense will do? How will they play this? And we've got this status hearing coming up on Thursday that the defense asked for. What should we expect?
Well, they'll probably try to get more information. I think they use these preliminary hearings to try to gather more information so they can better represent their client. But I think what they may try to do is to challenge the probable cause there, or at least to slow things down a little bit, to try to set a trial calendar that's beneficial to the defendant. But right now, the evidence looks pretty bad against their guy, and the most they can do is probably just try to get as much information as possible at this point.
How do you expect him to plead, Dave?
Not guilty. There's no way he's pleading guilty at this point. He's going to plead not guilty. He's going through the whole defense. He is going to make the prosecutors put everything on trial. He doesn't have to show anything. He can stay silent, and the prosecution has the entire burden. But here's another guarantee, Marni. Not only will he plead not guilty, but I will guarantee you that the prosecutors here will seek the death penalty. Because if you don't seek the death penalty in a case where 4 innocent college students were slaughtered in such a way, then when do you seek it? And Idaho is a death penalty state.
Right. And unfortunately, the jury did not go after the death penalty when we saw the Florida shooting in your state, the deadly shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. How likely is it to seat a jury and the challenges they will face in making that decision in a state like Idaho in such a highly publicized murder?
Idaho is a very red state and very pro-capital punishment. In the case of Nicholas Cruz, which you referenced, Marni, it's in Broward County, Florida, a very blue county, a lot more progressive attitudes, anti-death penalty in some parts. All you need is one. Idaho, it's much easier to get the death penalty, and I think there's a really good shot at it. Now, I do think there's a very high probability this case will be moved out of this small town into a bigger city like Boise, but they will be able to find a jury of his peers to be objective, because you don't need to find a jury who will just, be a blank slate. They can know about the case. They just have to say that they can remain impartial. And I've found in high profile cases, we always can get a jury.
Well, he faces the death penalty, if not that, life in prison. Again, a court appearance this Thursday. Dave, always good to see you. Thank you for being with us this morning. Appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.